Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Barry Campbell. Thank you so much for coming out today. I know you wanted to be at SantaCon, climbing over some Santas for your charitable event for today. So we appreciate you coming to Nanette Carter. Yes. I'm going to read a little bit about Nanette because most of you know her. I can show you her CV. It literally is 10 pages long. So we don't want to dwell on that, but I do want to run through some important information about Nanette. Nanette Carter has been exhibiting her work nationally and internationally since the mid-1970s. Her abstract collages reflect her deep sensitivity to injustice, with her recent pieces addressing the complex political, social, and cultural challenges of the 21st century. Drawing on influences ranging from African-American quilt-making to jazz to abstract expressionism, she constructs collages using mylar and oil paint. You will talk to us about this. Carter has recently retired from teaching at Pratt University in Brooklyn, where she was a professor of art for 20 years. She was born in 1954 in Columbus, Ohio, and grew up in Montclair, New Jersey, spending summers in Sag Harbor as well. In 1976, she graduated from Oberlin College in Ohio, and that same year she had her first solo exhibitions of drawings and prints there. Carter continued to study art at Pratt, where she received her MFA in 1978. She has received many grants, fellowships, and awards from organizations including Anonymous Was a Woman, the Gottlieb Foundation, the Pollock Krasner Foundation, the New York Foundation for the Arts, the Jerome Foundation, and the National Endowment for the Arts. In 2014, Carter was included in the group exhibition African American Artists and Abstraction held at the Museo Nacional de Bellas Artes, Havana, Cuba. And I'm sure you'll talk to us about that experience. In 2017, she was featured in Magnetic Fields, Expanding American Abstraction, a traveling museum show featuring African American women artists organized by the Kemper Museum of Contemporary Art. That is, I think, one of the places where I fell in love with your work. I saw it, I think, in 3 different venues. It was an amazing show. In 2021, Carter was the program curator and participant in creating community, Cinque Gallery artists at the Art Students League. In the past 5 years, Carter's works have been featured in over a dozen museum exhibitions. Carter's work is represented in many public and private collections, including the Columbus Museum of Art, the Perez Museum in Miami, the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, the St. Louis Museum, the Studio Museum, Yale University, and many, many others. That page is a good, full page of collections as well. Carter has 2 upcoming solo exhibitions at the Montclair Art Museum, opening February 8, 2025, and later in the year at the Wexner Center for the Arts in Columbus, Ohio. You are the hardest working woman in the show business, that's for sure. I always think I work hard when I look at Nanette and I'm like, oh yeah, she's right up there with Martha and I. So thank you. This is our second show with you, which we are so thrilled. It's our first show of your work in this space. And how incredible. And I think you all take a look around after and have a glass of wine. But I've been saying to everyone how activated this architecture is with Nanette's work. It's like these works are climbing up the walls to me. I think it's fantastic and I'm thrilled. I would like to hear about, because there's a lot of us that have been in the art world for a long time, I want to hear about the art world in New York in the 1970s, your experience as an artist, where did you show, who was influential, what was it like?
The 70s, don't forget I was really in school most of that time. Like you said, college, I finished in 76 and 78, I finished Pratt. But it was while I was at Pratt, it was a summer job actually out in Guildhall, East Hampton. I was working in the theater in the box office, and I met Al Loving at an opening there at Guildhall in the museum. Again, I'm working in the summer, trying to make money for my next semester of graduate school, but I'm working in the box office. So there's a big opening, and the only 2 people of color in the room are this big, handsome dude and me. And we, it was like that part in West Side Story when Maria and party tonight. Please come and join us. And after that, we were, serious buddies for years until, of course, he passed. He was my mentor. He was someone who had always an entourage of people. People loved this guy. He was gracious, he was giving of his knowledge. He loved to network, loved to help people out. And so the universe set me up with the right person at the right time. He was the one that then introduced me. Now we're talking, the late 70s into the early 80s. He introduced me to Ed Clark, Jack Whitten, Howardina Pindell, Vivian Brown, and just a whole list of amazing abstract artists.
Where was he showing at that time?
I'll tell you, in the late 70s, the only person I recall that had a gallery was Romeo Bearden at Cordia Extra, late 70s. I think it was in the early 80s that Ed Clark was showing at Randall Gallery on the East Side. And that was just a block or two away from the Whitney, great positioning. Soon after that, Howardina started to show at a gallery, I think it was called Lerner Heller, I'm not sure. And then Monique Knowlton began to show Betty Starr. And then I got a gallery in 1981 called the Erickson Gallery, which was on East 74th Street. Takis Evstathiou, Greek gentleman, owned the space, and his son is actually working across the street. That's right. Takis was my dealer, my first dealer. I had actually signed a contract, a 5-year contract. And I had an exhibition. I think I was in a group show. Dates are kind of foggy here, but I think I had my solo show in '83. At that time, Al did not have a gallery. Bill Hudson, another fabulous artist that I met through Al, did not have gallery representation. Let me tell you what was happening. In the early 80s, African-American artists were showing in people's apartments. There was one woman, Peg Alston, excuse me, who you know, who's still working and, working with some art. And then there was Diane Brewer. And these were women who were on the Upper West Side, and they were showing art in the apartment and selling art. And Peg was showing Stanley Whitney, just a bunch, I see his wife, but just a bunch of folks, William T. Williams showed there. We were showing in apartments. Al was showing with Diane Brewer, so was I. And again, in '81, I signed this contract with Takis, with Erickson Gallery. But very few people were showing, especially with abstract art. Very few museum shows at the time. And I do remember coming together at Bill Hudson's studio. Bill Hudson had a studio on West 22nd Street between 5th and 6th. Right around the corner was Ed Clark. But we would go to Bill's studio. He had very little furniture. It was his studio and a bed. But we'd go there and sit around his table and we'd commiserate about not showing and what we could do, and maybe we could put on our own shows and things like that. It was a tricky time, it was a difficult time, but we also had Sing K Gallery, which was started by Romeo Bearden. And Romy was really about showing young up-and-coming artists along with mature artists. And I ended up on the board of Sing K Gallery and their artistic board. We would actually look at the slides. Remember back then it was slides. We would look at slides from all across the country, and we would give one-person shows and sometimes two-person shows to people of
Those
color.
are the early shows.
These are early.
People's resumes.
Yeah,
that
that's
they're
right.
not showing at all.
That's
It's
right.
a very important experience.
Exactly. So many people came through that space. And what was so great too was that they were able to move to Soho. In fact, they were on the same floor as Jack Shaman. So they were getting great visibility. People were coming in. Ruth Jett was the director at the time, and she was just an amazing woman, knew everyone. And we all loved her dearly because she was printing catalogs for us. She somehow was raising money, fundraising. It was a not-for-profit. They had a board. And we put on these amazing shows. And I started to work with Mel Edwards, who was on the board at the time, fabulous sculptor. William T. was on that board. I think I was the first female on the artistic board. And so, 40 years later, the Art Students League wants to honor Romeo Bearden, Norman Lewis, all the guys that actually started the gallery, with having this show 40 years later at the Art Students League. And we did that a couple of years ago during COVID. And that was fabulous, bringing hundreds of people together. Actually, the catalog has quite a few folks. Of course, we couldn't put all the numbers, that we really wanted to in that gallery space. But there was a space on the wall that listed all the names of the artists that had shown there, and it was almost 500. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It was quite a service.
Yeah.
So, and when did you show with June Kelly?
June Kelly was, I believe, kind of late 80s. I had some issues with Eric and stuff. I won't go into detail. It got ugly.
Talk about an old dealer in front of your new
We
dealer.
got ugly. We tore up the contract. I moved on. I was extremely upset. Okay, I have to tell you this much. I don't want to gossip, but it's art history, right? This is art history.
Speak into the microphone, please.
Yeah, okay, so what happened was, I had my first solo show in 1983. Very excited. In my mind, I'm thinking, again, I've been showing at Diane Brewer's house in her apartment. And these are basically African-American people coming to buy the art, but now I'm on the east side. I'm on the Upper East Side. And my opening was filled with my people. Okay, there was no one there that he was introducing me to from the east side of Manhattan. And we sold out the show. So at the end of the show, I said, Takis, I didn't get a chance to meet any of your collectors. I brought out my people. Where were your collectors? And he went off on me. How dare you? You wouldn't be anywhere. So we ended it. I won't go any further than that.
Let's talk about the art.
Yes, that's okay.
Most important thing.
So every artist has the war stories, of course.
Yeah. And we can move back to that. So I'm interested in how you came to work on Mylar. Can you explain what Mylar is,
Yes.
and then also talk about why you like it so much?
It's actually a polyester resin, but I got the real scientific term here for Mylar. It is polyethylene terephthalate. It is a resin. It was actually discovered and created by DuPont back in the 50s. I actually brought pieces of Mylar because I had a feeling no one really knew what it was like when it doesn't have paint on it. As you see here, it's all painted. This is all oils on Mylar. The whole show is oils on Mylar. But I thought we would pass these around. I have the clear Mylar before I put any paint on it. You'll notice that there is a frosted side. That's the side I'm painting on. In other words, it's like the tooth of the paper or the tooth of the canvas. It's holding the paint. And then I actually have samples of some of the colors that you'll see here. This is actually a black oil that I'm rubbing with a very soft fabric to obtain this soft color. The room on this left side, has an awful lot of the works where I have this sort of warm brown flavor here, but it's actually black. It's a warm black. And then some of the dripping that I do, my dripping is very different from Pat Steele's dripping, okay? But you'll see a lot of the pieces there, and I have a little swath of that for you to take a look at, and then some other things with white and what have you. So if we could pass that around.
Do you start large though? Is it a large piece of Mylar and then you're
Okay, you know, I'd love to talk about this piece
Yeah.
because then you really will get a sense of what's going on. The shapes that you see, and of course I am a shape queen, I love forms and shapes. The shape that you see that has the gray and the phthalo blue, on my studio floor, I'm getting, rolls of mylar. It's 52 inches, and I'm rolling out about 10 feet of this mylar, 52-inch width. And I usually put newspapers underneath it now because I am on the floor. So anyway, I'm painting on the floor with this. The shapes that you see, I have drawn in a pad, some of them, not all of them. And I've begun to figure out where I want them to be placed. But then when it came time to cutting, I'm just cutting. I just go in and start cutting. So from that long piece that I had on the floor, I painted on. Now I'm cutting these shapes. Then came the area where you see the dripping happening. Now with the dripping, I'm taking a long piece of mylar, putting it onto plexiglass, leaving the plexiglass against my wall and letting the paint drip. And I'm building that drip up, depending on how opaque I want it to be or how much intensity of color that I want to come through. And in fact, if you don't mind, just show a couple things. What you see here is actually an overlapping of the drip areas. This darker drip blue, or actually this is one piece of mylar that's sitting on top of this one to change the value of that blue. The white that you see, I'm painting with gray and then white on top, so bits of the gray comes through. And then I'm just rolling Blick art tape and, taping it up to my walls. I've got a wall that's 13 feet width, 9 feet height, and this is 12 feet. So I'm gluing and trying to figure out how I want things to move. This is coming from a series, these 3 pieces, that's called Shifting Perspectives. And I really felt that this had a lot to do with the way we've been living lately. Lots of things changing very quickly. So
I have
much.
a question about the series. Well, first I just want to ask, how did you get onto the wall? Because you used to paint on canvas. When was it, or did it take a year?
It took a while to get to the shaped pieces. I started working with mylar in the late 90s. I went to a show in '84 at the Cooper Hewitt Museum, and it was a show of Frank Lloyd Wright's drawings and his students from Taliesin. I at one point wanted to be an architect, and I think you see some of the architectonics there in my work. I saw these drawings on mylar, and the way that the lead pencil looked on the surface was as though it was a dry point line. It looked like poured butter. It was a buttery line. And I just thought, what in the world is this? What is going on? And the color pencil that was used also, just absolutely stunning. I was so excited about it that I didn't make an appointment with the curator. I just knocked on the curator's door. A very kind woman came out and told me about mylar. I had never heard of this surface before. She said that architects have been using it since the late 50s. DuPont were the outfit that actually created this surface. And of course, the architects liked it, they said, because tracing paper just was so flimsy. And if you go out to the site where a building is being built in Windward, anyway, the transparency factor, and I'm hoping that you all had a chance to take a look and to feel something mylar. They liked the transparency factor, the fact that it was so strong. I think there are just so many sort of things that happen. There's sort of a confluence of things. I think looking at Al Loving's shaped works kind of got me thinking about working away from the rectangle and the square. And Of course, he was also a wonderful collage artist. Just so happened I had my timing, again, the universe is great. I ran into people like Howardina Pindell, who's punching holes out and gluing these absolutely exquisite pieces together, these little punched out color papers, and just the richness of her surfaces, and I'm a surface person. Seeing Ed Clark with his, huge industrial broom, painting and pushing his paint around this canvas, to see these people, this inventive kind of nature that I loved, and being around Al, and as much as he talks about his fabric pieces were really kind of coming from his grandmother who did do quilts, but the structure of them and just the way that, the forms that he was able to come up with, it just absolutely stunning. So being around all these people, I think I just felt like I've got to just take this and push it as far as I can.
Nobody else works like this.
No, and I don't know if anyone has ever worked on Mylar as long as I have. Yeah. There are different gauges that you can get. I found an outfit in Alabama that makes rolls of this stuff, which is incredible. And I feel that because I can work with the oils on them, with paper you'd have to frame. You're always framing and putting plexiglass in front. Here I can frame and I don't have to put plexi in front of it. It's oils and it's this tough stuff. Wow.
Let's talk about the series now, because I have to explain to people, I think often when I'm talking about series, people think series are like 1, 2, 3. They don't understand an artist works in a series. Can you talk about, the first time you did the Shifting Perspectives, I think, was in our last show. We had Shifting Perspectives
right.
#1 in that show.
Black and White was also in the show, and Destabilized.
Yeah.
So that's just 2 years ago. I'm still working.
Yeah. So tell us about the Shifting Perspectives, and how I think they're aesthetically different than some of the other series. Can you talk about how they're different, and tell us about Shifting Perspectives?
I'm going to go back just a bit though. I started to work with Mylar, like I said, in the late 90s, but it wasn't until 97 that I decided I'm just going to work on Mylar. I started a series that was called Slightly Off Keel, which is a different feel from kilter, okay? Keel, of course, we're talking about the keel of a sailboat. When it's off keel, it means you're moving fast. That's what you want a sailboat to do. You've got to get your sea legs, because of course there's a major tilt. But I felt that way coming into the new millennium. I felt like I was trying to get my sea legs. I just bought my first computer. It was that bubble blue Apple. I was scared to death. I didn't know what the hell it was, but I got to keep up, because if you fall off that sailboat, it's not like they've got the brakes they can put on and tell you to jump off. No, they've got to tack the boat around, and the wind is going, and you may be out there flailing. You have to keep up. So Slightly Off Keel was about me holding on. All of us holding on, I know. Especially folks who are my age. This was just, things were moving so fast. And so the series started in 97. It went on for about 5 years, but 107 works are in that series. 107 works, both large and small. Again, I have this 13-foot by 9-foot wall in my studio. So, and I love working small. I enjoy working small. I have this thing about scale. And I remember Al Loving telling me, you're one of the few people I know that, even if I'm doing a small drawing, I understand kind of how that's going to translate on that kind of scale. Anyway, I just want to say that about series. A series can be, sometimes I've done series that only lasted for maybe 5 or 6 pieces. What's so interesting right now, though, Christine, is that I've never worked on more than one series at once. I'm working on so many damn series, and all at once. All of these pieces, most of these pieces are from 2024. There are a few that are 2020, I think maybe that, 2023, I'm sorry. But most of this is 2024, and they're more Afro Sentinels. These are not all the Sentinels. I think it's just because of this time we're living in, and I do feel that in many ways I'm documenting, the times. And so, in the room to the left, I have a series that's called The Group, and it's about my girlfriends, and we go back almost 40 years. The eldest is 82, the youngest is 67, I'm 70, I'm in the middle. We have been together through thick and thin. We held each other up during COVID. We had one friend that passed, but we are still together. We've traveled together. So I wanted to pay homage to them and to thank them for getting me through COVID and everything else. And then there's Afro Sentinels. Afro Sentinels are to protect Black and brown people all around the world. These are sentinels like the sentinels that you would see in the Chinese burial sites, where they would have, thousands of sentinels that were to protect this, emperor, this major citizen. Gargoyles were to protect the buildings, in Europe of evil spirits. This is, so I'm coming out of that, but of course mine look very different. They're basically 8-foot tall pieces that I think give you the sense of maybe war, items of war, whether it be a hatchet or a spear. Someone told me the other day that they felt these were shields for war. Anyway, then comes this series, which again I started, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, Shifting Perspectives. When we saw Obama and his family in the White House for 8 years, no controversy with the children, grandma's living there, it's a family that's together and strong, and it's a brilliant group of people. It was like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. And to get this backlash with Trump, just a whole different feel, the civility in this country, the lack of civility, I still cannot deal with. I'm an older woman, I just don't know this. You don't talk about people like this. Just these shifts that are happening that are just meteoric, And then what's going on in the Levant? What's going to happen in Syria and Israel? I mean, this stuff is just changing so fast. Syrians that might be coming back home, but maybe they shouldn't come back. What is it going to be like? All of this stuff that we've been living through in this, 10 years, the last 10 years, this shift. But I also wanted to give the sense of resilience, fortitude, strength. And so this building up and this sense of, imbalance is there, but I think it's also a sense of again, resilience, of hope and faith, and that's all we have, And to work with each other. I've heard people say that now we need to work with our communities, our immediate communities. I like that. So then I have black and white. I'm sorry, Christy, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
You do have a lot of series that we can go through. What I would like to know is, we've talked about this, but a lot of people come in and recognize the movement in these. So I'd love to hear about how dance is connected to, I know music, you listen to music, but tell us about dance.
Yeah, my mother was a dancer. One of my mother's students ended up in Alvin Ailey's company. She taught when we lived in Columbus. She taught in Montclair. And my mother would put on recitals. And she would sew the costumes. Now this is at a time where everyone sewed. If you're in the 60s or 70s of your life, there was a time where everyone had a sewing machine. Everyone had a singer. Vogue patterns, all of that. McCall, okay, you sewed. My mother would make the costumes. So as a child of 3 or 4, I'm looking at this woman working with taffeta and all this wonderful sparkly stuff. But then also she would sew our clothes. And there was something about the patterns, the shape of the patterns. I just loved these shapes. remember it was a flimsy material too. It wasn't anything, but the shapes, and then to see her cut the fabric and then put these shapes together, and it ended up something I could put on, or it was a tutu, and I said, "Watch out before a tutu." I'm like, everyone wants to put on a tutu, you know. Anyway, it was magic. It was absolute, for a child of 3, 4, 5, it was magic. And then to see her recitals performed on stage, you know, all of that was, and here she is orchestrating these bodies, movement and all. I just thought that's what everybody's mother did, and so I wanted to do the same thing, you know. I think that's where it all began. I think it's where now my father was in politics, and so, and I think families during the 60s especially, when you sat down to dinner, if you had guests or just a family, you were talking about the civil rights movement. That was what was on. In the 60s, everybody's on. My dad and my mom were very much involved in the NAACP, they were in the Urban League, they were very involved in community outreach and participation and what have you. And trying to make sure that our schools, and I have to tell you, Montclair schools at the time was 30% black and 70% white, making sure that the students were in the right places that they should be, because it was also the setup of, which I think is very strange. Anyway, you know, you had your first group, your second group, and the folks who maybe learned a little slower in the third group. You know, I remember my mother having to go to the high school several times to make sure that we were being set up right, put in the right positions. Anyway, so hearing that, you know, the March on Washington, all of these things that are happening in the 60s, very exciting times. I think that it just hit me that, you know, one has to always be connected with what's going on outside. You know, things are moving, you need to be involved. And so Dad was the one, my father ended up becoming the mayor of Montclair. And one of the things that he wanted to do, even before he became mayor, he was actually commissioner, was to make sure that there was a section of our town that was inhabited primarily black people who worked for the wealthy. These were the maids, the butlers, the chauffeurs, the landscape people. And the area of town in Montclair did not have sidewalks, did not have decent plumbing. And my father became the commissioner of public works just so that he could fix that area of town. Some people did not have any plumbing in terms of the toilets. They were going to an outhouse. This is the 50s and 60s outhouse there in their backyards in Montclair.
So wonderful tribute that you've got your solo exhibition coming here in
Yes, that's right.
We've got Montclair in the house here today. So
Mary Birmingham is the curator for my show that's coming up at the Montclair Art Museum. The director of the Art Museum is here now. Ira Wagner, raise your hand. Yes, there he is. The director is here. Thank you all for coming. Actually, thank everyone for coming on this cold day.
And please come see the show in Montclair, because it will be some of these pieces displayed in different ways. It's really a retrospective, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Many survey.
Well, Mary, now you have pieces from high school.
Yes.
Yes. There will be drawings and paintings from high school. Okay.
Representative pieces
That's
from
right.
the 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts, and then
Up to
really
today.
showing some of the recent
Yeah.
art.
But let me, real quick, let me just say, Montclair High School, Montclair schools, fabulous public schools. When I was in 6th grade, we had a tabletop press, and we were doing dry point etchings on copper, because copper's very soft. We were printing on a tabletop press in 6th grade. In high school, we had a dark room. We had one larger, but we had a dark room. We were painting oils. We had a kiln and 2 wheels. We were doing ceramics. We were sculpting. we would take trips into the city, and I'll never forget the trip that we took to the Guggenheim. I saw this, and maybe some of you remember this Mondrian show, retrospective, where you started at the top and you wound around and started with his landscapes, and you could see how he began to abstract those landscapes. And for a child, a teenager, to see that, I didn't realize that artists could change. That because of their experiences and taking in things or whatever, that I thought you just did figurative art all your life. I didn't realize that things could actually change up and enter into your life and make you want to go a different route. So those kind of things was just so integral to my beginnings here in this career in Montclair. And so we'll show some of those pieces. And then also next year I'll be at the Wexner. I'm from Columbus, so I was born in Columbus. The Wexner's a part of the Ohio State University. Huge, huge campus, but the Wexner's beautiful. And I will be showing at the Columbus College of Art and Design. So yeah, it's a busy
I understand. 20 museum shows last year.
Yeah.
And people just think I'm making the number up. I'm not. So I look forward to this coming year. Should we open it up for some questions?
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions? Margaret?
I want to go back to a time when you were asked at the Parish Art Museum to find works in their collection that were meaningful to you, and a whole room was devoted to the things that you had selected. Among them was a painting by Mary Gregoriadis, who is
Gorgeous.
Yes,
Rich. And they gave it a really nice spot in the catalog. They printed this amazing catalog.
But then there was a little panel, and it came to you, and they asked for you to talk about what was really important to you in making these selections. And of course, it came to be color.
Well, color, but also there were so many pieces in the collection by women that had never been exhibited. People may not, well, of course, folks probably realize this, but they put down dates every time a piece is shown. And I kept on seeing these beautiful pieces by women artists that had no dates on it. They had never been shown. And so, I had some of my friends, and it also, I have to say, of course, but it was predominantly women. And color was definitely a part of it. I had Romare Bearden on either side of me, along with a Frank Wembley that was on that wall. Frank Wembley has a show coming up. In fact, he shows here. Frank is another one of my mentors. In fact, he's probably my first mentor. I was 13 years old when I met Frank Wembley. And I'm sorry, I'm going to jump off from the parish because I want to talk about Frank real quick. Frank I met in Sag Harbor. He lived down the street from my family, and his son was my age, and his son was a very attractive young man. And we would go to the beach, and I looked up to him because he was a couple years older than I was, but he said, "Come to my house, my parents are having a party tonight. We'll look through the glass windows and laugh and drink wine and laugh at them dancing." So it was like a bunch of us went up there, and I'm looking at these, elderly folks were considered to us to be elderly. We're in our teens, right? They were probably like 30 or 40, but elderly people trying to dance. And just cracking up and having a great time looking at these huge glass windows that you could see into the living room. But what I noticed were all these paintings that were all around. And I asked, his name was Walden. Walden, who were these artists? Who are you collecting? He said, "No, those are all my father's paintings." I was new to the area. We had just built this house at the time. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I want to talk to your father. I've got to talk to this guy." And he was doing such incredible paintings, but also collages. And I just loved the collages. Tearing the paper, giving that sort of deco edge. The edges were so important. I love edges. The buildup of paint, the buildup of the collage, all of the sometimes fabric, sometimes canvas on canvas, sometimes paper or cardboard, just wonderful, rich surfaces. And he was, know, very giving. It took me around, and I got to see more pieces, and we became friends. You know, yeah.
I think there was a question back here.
I also live in Sag Harbor, and I own one of your smaller pieces.
Oh, lovely you.
That's our church. My question is more of a kind of, I guess, logistical question. For the pieces that aren't framed, for purchasers, do you provide instructions of how to install? You know,
I do. In fact, I have templates that actually will tell you exactly where things should fall.
what the order should be.
Exactly. But I also, and I tell you, I've had people who wanted to go directly on their walls, and I have had people who wanted to be framed. And what I will do is to put them onto UPO, which is also a plastic-like surface. Okay, not cardboard, not using a board, but this UPO. And then I don't have to put plexi in front of it, and so there's nothing that's going to really impede and reflect and what have you. So I will work with that buyer however they see fit, or, you know, whatever they're comfortable with. Let me just say, I was at a show at, Madison College, was it George? James Madison. Thank you, Mary. James Madison College, and I was not able to fly out there, and they actually did a Zoom with me, and I instructed them with the template how to put the piece on. There were two pieces. Oh yeah, well the folks, and your team, the team here is fabulous, let me just say
I think
too.
it's not as complicated as people
No,
think, because
exactly.
there's pieces, they're already put together. It's not all of these pieces being put up on the wall. They're
glued,
2 or
yeah.
3 large
Yeah,
pieces. So
let me just say that these pieces that you see that are coupled together, they're glued together.
yeah.
So you're not piecing things together. And in fact, for this piece, what I did was I, made this template. And the template is Mylar that goes the length of this piece. And the template has a cutout of just where these pieces should be. The template tells you where's the center. The template also has the level line. And so you put it up on the wall, you get the center of your wall. Again, I have it on the template, the center. Put up the piece, and then you just insert these right into that template. And so all of the big pieces that you see here have templates and are in sections. Now, a piece like this, I believe this is 3 sections, yeah, this is 3 sections. And I think this is actually 3 sections also. This is a larger, longer, taller piece. Yeah, so I'll work with you, but if you want it framed, we can do it. It's framed.
Hi, Nanette. I was going to ask about where your ideas for the shapes come from, but I can totally see a pattern over there. But I'm also looking side to side and wondering if the main water and boats.
Boats. People see boats, that's right, yes. Especially in this one, I think, yeah. This one reminds me of the totems that I saw out in Seattle and Washington. Some will say also Vancouver. They have those wonderful totems from the indigenous peoples. Yeah. I love shapes. And sometimes I don't even realize what I'm doing. Someone else will come up and say, but don't you see that this is... yeah.
Subconscious.
It is, yes.
Did you ever work in a representational style?
Had to, in art school, had to, oh yeah. Figuration, perspective drawings, actually we did that in high school. Oh, I designed my parents' kitchen when I was 14 years old because we had learned 1 and 2 point perspective in Montclair High. And the kitchen, I still have the drawings for it. And in fact, I got a commission at 14 to do someone else's kitchen. I thought I was going to be an interior designer, and when this couple came up to me and asked me to do American Colonial, I said, hell no. Isn't it percolate right? It was like my way or the highway. He set up the furniture, don't you move the furniture. And if he came back to visit you and the furniture was moved, you move it back. I'd be just like that. So it was best for me to create my own stuff, okay? I get all the architectonics I want. No one has to tell me what to do. I love it. I'm in the right place. I know I am.
I'm curious how you begin a piece. Do you work from a drawing? Do you take photographs?
No photographs, sometimes drawings, especially for big pieces. Sometimes I draw directly on the wall. I love doing that. And sometimes I just start working. I just start to cut shapes. I don't know what it is. There's this thing about moving the scissor, and I've got one of those really long shears. I saw this wonderful film. If you all went to see the Matisse show at MoMA years ago, they had this wonderful black and white film of Matisse. These scissors were yay long. But I understand why, because then you can make that cut, that rounded cut, and just let it keep going. You don't have to keep snipping and snipping. It's that continuous, I love that continuous motion. It's just the movement. I also really love painting on this surface. It's so different from the canvas or paper. It's so smooth. It's just this wonderful feel to it when I'm moving the brush across. So I'm doing everything I love to do, all of it. I love, again, the architectonics, the building. There's something about this idea of collage. And Karen, I've heard you say this so many times. Picasso always said, collage, what is it, you cut and you glue. No, I'm working with these surfaces. If you haven't had a chance to walk around to see the show, I have some recipes for surfaces you've never seen before, okay? I've got things I have developed. No, it is more than just snipping and gluing, okay? A lot more, and especially when you scale it up. But I feel like I'm a builder. I feel like I'm building. And again, it goes back to this, desire to be an architect and to build. I'm getting ready to come off the wall. What time is it? We're going over time now.
There was one part.
Okay, more questions. Real quick, I'm about to come off the wall.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, move on.
Okay.
Next
One more
question.
question, but that's
Come off the wall first.
Hello.
Yes.
So first things, I appreciated your celebration of Montclair High School. I think there is a lot to be said for public schools that teach certain as they don't. I have a kind of simple question, which is, do you find that your training as an figurative art has really benefited the work that you're abstract work? Or I've heard some artists say that they had to kind of forget what they were taught in art school to really allow their to empower the creative side of them to do more abstract work. So did you find that to be the case?
No, I think that, again, the forms that I'm dealing with are coming out of natural forms nature, the body. Things that I see when I'm out walking. I think there are quite a few abstract artists that would say it's nature that they were kind of deconstructing and making new, There are some artists that might say maybe it really was the figure that I was deconstructing and pulling apart and abstracting. For me, it was probably more landscape, and I think it was, I know it was because of my family having this house in Sag Harbor and seeing the ocean. I lived a block away from the bay. I could easily walk to the bay as a child. That's where I met my friends. We would swim, the sand, all of that. I know the sky. That's what you're seeing here. It's more landscape than figure. But no. I think all of those. It just sort of grounds you in terms of getting you to draw and think about how you want to draw. We all draw differently, and that's the beauty of it too. Finding your way of drawing, your individual expression. And I think school helps you to do that. Yeah. And it depends on the professor you have to, but school can help you to do that.
All right, well, thank you all for coming today. Thank you, Nanette, so much, and have